there's a different attitude towards professional registration if you are employed in the public sector. I'm not sure if it still pertains now that we have OSD, this occupation-specific dispensation, which creates a financial incentive, as it were, to register and also to attract registered professionals into public sector jobs, so that some level of competition, even though I still maintain that government pays more than private sector. In my, especially once you get to your level, what is it, 12, 13, 14, I mean, chief director and those big titles, they earn more than what similarly people of similar profile in the private sector do. But anyway, be that as it may, I like the phrase that you use. It's not seen as career limiting. Lack of professional registration in SOEs or public sector is not seen as career limiting. But because now, as a transition into my next question, was to be, now that you know about the existence of these bodies, did you understand the difference between them? What's the now you come to hear about your specific voluntary association only up until then only heard about EXA. Was it for you, well, why should I bother? Are they one or the other? Are they competing organizations? I just choose, I can belong to this one, but I can also belong to that one. How did you understand that? Now that, there's this South African Institute of Electrical Engineers or Electrical Engineering. No, I'm okay, I'm with AXA. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, well, I think for me it was I was fortunate because when I joined, first of all, I was an ESCOM buzzer, so I joined after graduating. I joined ESCOM, and ESCOM, they have a structured a program to train engineer. I'm not sure if they still have it, but yeah, I think they used to have it. And in that program, one of the key objectives of the program is to train the engineers so that they can assist the business. But the second one is to train them such that they are able to meet the EXA requirements. So during that process, when we are being trained, we are also being made aware that as part of EXA, obviously, there are certain outcomes that you need to meet. And one of those outcomes is continuous development. So one of the, and of course, they also do make you aware that the various way of achieving the CPDs point is to obviously attend various programs, courses and so forth, but to also work with your peers. And the easiest way of being able to work with your peers in order to develop yourself is to become a member of a voluntary association. So I think in my case, it was simple as that, because I was made aware. I was part of a structured program whose objective was to get people professionally registered. Ironically, most of the people, like as I indicated at ESCOM, they don't register. I know that you mentioned that in government there is this new policy, the OSD, which in fact now in government you can't be employed without in an engineering position without a professional registration. Is one of the requirements. In fact, for every advert, if they advertise a position for an engineer, one of the requirements is that you must be a member, a professional registered candidate. So, but at ESCOM, I don't think it's the case. I mean, it was not the case. I don't think it's the case even now. I mean, people, they still, I know some of my peers, in fact, which I graduated with, now they have hold position of senior engineers, but they are not professionally registered. So, although there is that program which emphasizes, even if you look at the structure, it's structured such that you need to meet the EXA outcomes. But people, because there are no incentives, they don't get incentivized for that. You can earn the same salary, you not being registered, and another person registered. So why should I register? And then, of course, there's also a matter of fees. People that are saying the fees that you pay to X are equal to the same fees that you pay to the voluntary association. And they don't feel like they're not getting anything from registering with X, but at least they do get those discounts for causes if they are members of a voluntary association. So this is how I got to know about the difference between the professional registration board and the voluntary association.
Okay. No, geez, that is very, very insightful, Mlondi, because it seems to suggest to me that amongst other things that are coming up, that there is this comparison of where the value is from what, the examples you made, CPD, discounts, and all those things that you've mentioned, and that there's no consistency amongst employers, and maybe there's no need in terms of creating that expectation or requirement of professional registration, whether with EXA or with any other regulatory body, and so people will naturally rather pay one instead of two if they feel, well, I don't know what I'm getting for paying them, and I know what I'm getting for paying these because of the things you mentioned. And yes, you use an example of ESCOM, and I'm not sure exactly what happens at Transnet. And I was about to ask about...
it's the same. My colleagues there, I know.
That's quite interesting, because, if I look at the three biggest SOEs in South Africa combined, is ESCOM, Transnet, and SANRAL.
Yeah.
Now, with SANRAL, which predominantly employs civil engineers, my experience with SANRAL is that as a client representative employed at SANRAL, and then I'm an employee of SANRAL, but I employ Mlondi
as a consultant
engineers to work on SANRAL projects. As I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, and for a long time, and maybe still the case is, I hope that's still the case, and at least until recently, SANRAL people, as client representative overseeing and the work of their consultants that they have appointed, are PR themselves. They don't take design risk and design responsibility. That risk passes on to the consultants. Then that's why they demand the kind of PIs that they demand, because we're talking about national roads, bridges, culverts, all manner of infrastructure that must be designed on national roads. Similarly, Transnet, I'm sure I don't have examples at the tip of my hand because I haven't worked for Transnet. There's similar big decisions that are made on high priority and sensitive infrastructure. And so from a peer review of some sort, and knowing that when I'm going to a meeting and presenting a few design scenarios or options, I'm talking to an engineer who is also professional registered and maybe similar experience and understanding of what that needs to be done. And I'm not sure which one is right or wrong. I know which one I would prefer, but there is no consistency in that. There is no distinction in your context, whether or not you're registered, even in terms of the work and the salary perhaps that you earn. I'm not sure to what extent those individuals get into even level of responsibility. It sounds to me would be the same, and I'm not sure what level of decision making those guys are able or are allowed to make or are empowered to make, because definitely in the private sector there tends to be, and I'm not saying that the PR tech eng cannot sign off on designs or those kind of things, but there's still that hierarchy in most design offices, whether it's architecture or engineering, that the sign off happens by and through someone with a PR eng registration, and not just BSc or MSc and then it stops there. In civil engineering, there's a specific requirement that, okay, this PRN has seen that, okay, he's happy, the drawings can be issued to a contractor, or to I don't know who, a client body, because they've had a look at it, and maybe the business operating model at Eskom and Transit is different. I'm not sure to what extent. And the Engineering Act, even though I haven't read it recently, but I think the Engineering Act is also very specific, and it's one of the first pieces of legislation about a profession, if not the only. I'm not aware of the Architecture Act or Construction, not about the regulatory body, but about the profession itself. There's an act in South Africa that's called the Engineering Act. Am I right?
Yeah, X number 46, yes.
Yeah.
Of 2000. So yes.
I find that, and I know, I'm a little bit being unfair and maybe speaking out of ignorance because I'm not an engineer. And I'm talking this purely out of principle, based on my level of understanding of the differences between a regulatory body and a statutory body. And therefore, within EXA, now I'm curious to know, out of all the disciplines that they register, if people don't feel that as electrical engineers there's any point in them registering with EXA, they probably have the lowest numbers compared to civil engineers, who are expected to be registered as PRN and maintain their professional registration through CPD and all those things that are required. And so for me, that's an interesting piece of knowledge I've just gained here.
There are people, I don't want to be misunderstood. There are people who are registered at in some of these SOEs and in certain sections of like, for instance, an SOE like ESCOM had many departments. You have planning, you have people who do designs, you have who are in operations, and you would find that, for instance, some of the people that sign off designs, like for instance, a senior engineer in a design development would probably be someone with, for instance, the one that I worked under, he did have a PRN, But the rest of the team, almost everyone is not registered, and if the attitude is that the highest, if you want to become a senior engineer, maybe so that you can sign off. But you can still become a manager of a section, even if you don't have a PRN, there is a senior engineer who's going to sign off the designs. You can go all the up and become an EPEND. You don't need a PRN to become a EPEND. So those are the kind of arguments that people have put forward against registration, to say, I don't want to be a senior engineer here. I would rather become a manager of the section, and and probably earn more, So,
I don't want to overgeneralize, and I know you're rephrasing because you also don't want to overgeneralize, and that's not the conversation. That's not the implication. I hope once this is broadcast and out there, that people will not interpret it in that way.